Hi, my name is Jess and I'm going to be showing you guys how to give a bearded dragon a bath and how to safely cut their nails. So the bearded dragon that I'm going to be giving a bath today is Odie. This is Odie. He turned 7 years old this May and I got him as a little hatchling, so he was my first reptile. I've had him longer than anyone else. And I will just mention very quickly, because I know you guys will see it later in the video, Odie is a little bit chunky. He's on the chunky side. I am well aware of this and I have been working to fix it for the past few years and just nothing seems to work. He eats his veggies, he eats all kinds of bugs, he just seems to hold on to this chunkiness, and he's just a little bit on the chubby side. So I will just make a note that I am very aware of that, and you guys will definitely see it in the video when I'm giving him a bath. So when it comes to bathing reptiles, it's not something that you need to do every day or every other day or anything like that. A bath for a reptile is something you could use to simply help clean them up, like if they made a mess in their tank, if they got some poop or some food or anything like that on them. A bath is a quick, easy way to help clean that up. Baths can also help when reptiles are going through shed. If you let your reptiles soak for a few minutes, it can help loosen up that skin and make it a little bit easier for them to take that shed off, especially with stuck shed. A bath is also something that could be like a form of enrichment for reptiles, especially species that enjoy the water. If they take a bath once a week or they get to sit in the water for a few minutes every once in a while, it could be just a form of enrichment for them, especially if they're a water enjoying species and they enjoy that kind of enrichment. So as far as my bathing setup for my reptiles, I don't actually have a tub. I just have this low shower. So I just take like a big bin like this. This is actually one of their travel bins. That's why there's all these holes drilled into it. But I just take a bin like this and I fill it with about 1 inch, 2 inches of water, depending on who I'm bathing. And I just let them kind of hang out in here, and this is their little bathtub. With reptiles, since they're cold-blooded, bath temperature is not a matter of comfort, it's more so a matter of actually keeping your reptiles safe. So when it comes to bathing bearded dragons, you typically want your water temp to be between like 85 and 100. 100 is definitely on the hotter end, so I would say more so about like the 90 range to be safe. And so you can easily check your temperature if you have little thermometers, a little heat gun, things like that. But if you're used to it, you can kind of like eyeball it, but to be safe, you could just always use a thermometer or something like that. It is also important that if your reptile will be in the bath for an extended period of time, the water is obviously going to get colder. So you want to make sure it's not dipping into the ranges that are a bit too low, that are going to make your animal pretty chilly and pretty cold while they're at the end of their bath time. So to make everyone a little bit more comfortable, I typically put like a rock or something in there that they can use as like a little island. This is especially helpful with snakes because a snake will just spin and spin since they don't have the legs to stand on the bottom. So a snake will be looking for something like this to hang on to, and this will be really helpful. So I typically just put in a little island just to make them a little bit more comfy. And to actually wash them, I've just been using this toothbrush. It's just a soft bristled toothbrush. It's like pretty soft, it's easy to clean their scales with, things like that. And when you're bathing reptiles, you probably don't need soap. If they're super dirty or they have something you specifically need to clean out, you could use soap. It would just be really, really important to make sure that all the ingredients within it are reptile safe, because they're obviously a lot more sensitive to things like that than we would be. So it's important to do your research before using any kind of actual cleaning products besides just water. So the reason I'm giving Odie a bath today is because you can see he's starting to shed the end of his tail right here. That's why it's a little bit more gray. So soaking in some warm water for a few minutes will help him. It will help kind of loosen that up and maybe make shedding a little bit easier for him. So whenever they're in the bath, you can just let them soak. I don't necessarily need to clean Odie today, so I won't really be using the toothbrush or anything like that. But I'll just let him soak for a little while, and since he can stand on this rock, I do sometimes just scoop up the water gently and I'll kind of like run it over his back, and sometimes I'll put it up on his head. But it is important, since they have those open ears and stuff, you don't want their heads to be underwater. You don't want to specifically be putting water like in their open ear canal or anything like that. So it's just important to just be gentle and be slow and just be sure that your animal's comfortable with what you're doing. So I'm just gonna let him soak for a few minutes and maybe help ease this shed a little bit, and then I'll take him out and talk about cutting his nails. So Odie's been soaking for about 10 minutes. I usually give my reptiles 10 to 15 minute baths because during that time the water temperature doesn't fluctuate that much. And as you can see, there's little bits of shed in here. He shed some of his toes, and I was able to get this huge piece of shed off of his tail. It doesn't hurt to help your reptile shed, but it's important that you're only doing it when you can tell it's ready. So if it's already starting to flake off, it won't hurt if you help them and you kind of pull that off a little bit more. But as you can see, he still has this little bit right here, and he has a tiny bit left on the end of his tail that wasn't quite ready. So if I were to sit and scrape at that, it would actually hurt him if I were to do that. So that's why he's just gonna have those few patches, and I'll maybe let him soak later this week. But these little pieces you see floating around came off on their own, and this piece started to unravel itself and was actually disconnected the whole way down, so I was able to just peel it off around his tail like that. So like I said, he's been in here about 10 minutes, and I'm gonna take him out and I'm gonna dry him off now. So to dry Odie off and cut his nails, what I usually do is I put his towel up on the toilet seat. So I'm actually sitting on the ground and I'm kind of eye level with him, where I can see his nails a lot easier and see a little bit closer what I'm going to be doing. So to dry him off, I just have designated towels that I use for my reptiles, and you just kind of pat dry them. And you don't even have to do that. You could just put them back in their enclosure, and their heat lamps will obviously help dry them off. So I'm not gonna dry him off super well. I'm just gonna use this kind of angle and show you how I trim his nails. So to cut their nails, I actually use just normal nail clippers, the same that I would use on myself. With reptiles, it is important to just be careful because their nails are so small and their fingers are so small. So if they're wiggling around a lot and they're moving a lot, you obviously want to take your time, because this could very easily take off a little gecko's toe, or it could even cause some damage to Odie or bigger reptiles too. And reptiles also have quicks, which is basically a blood vessel at the back of their nail, same with dogs and cats. If you cut their nail a little bit too short, it could cause them to bleed. There is a product that's called Quick Stop, and there's other things that are similar like that. And it's basically like a goop, like a glue, that if that happens, you basically just dot it on the end of their nail and it stops them bleeding from the end of their nail where you just cut it a little bit too short. But it's important to try to just avoid that altogether. So as you can see, Odie's nails are not that long actually, because you can see I do kind of keep them trimmed, especially because I don't want them getting caught in things. So I'm not going to trim all of them since they definitely don't need it, but I'll probably focus on some of these back nails, and I'll actually turn him so it's a bit easier to see. And I'll just trim some of these up and I'll show you guys how I do that. So with their quicks, that blood vessel I was talking about, you can kind of see, it's really hard to tell where it is towards the back. It's like just a little bit darker area on the back of their nail. So just to be on the safe side, it is also easier if you just take a little bit off at a time. So if I was cutting this nail, I kind of see where Odie's quick is. So I would take off the teeniest, tiniest bit and see how much space is left. And since that one is already pretty close, I probably won't take much more off of that. And if you guys can see this tiny little bit, that's all I took off. So you're not gonna necessarily need to cut off big pieces at once, especially if you're keeping up with the maintenance and not letting their nails get overgrown. And Odie is obviously very used to getting his nails cut, so he doesn't even wiggle around at all. But like I said, if your reptile is pretty wiggly, it's important to make sure they're a little bit more still, especially before you commit and you clip, because you definitely don't want to clip their toes or accidentally get that quick like I was talking about. His front nails are pretty short and they're kind of flat because I cut them I think a week ago. And as you can see, his back nails are about that same length. And they're kind of flat, so they're not hooked or gonna catch on anything, like they won't catch on this towel or anything like that. So Odie is all done. He took his bath, did some shedding, and I cut his nails. And now I'm just gonna let the rest of this water that's left on him kind of absorb, and I'm gonna go put him back under his heat lamp so he can finish drying off. So Odie is back in his tank now. He's hanging out under his basking lights to finish drying up. So that's how I bathe my bearded dragons. That's how I cut their nails. And it's really important, if that method doesn't work for you, or you see other videos and those methods don't work for you, there's tons of videos out there, I'm sure. I know that there's tons of research. So if you keep reading, just keep researching and just try to find something that works for you if this doesn't. All reptiles are different, all reptile keepers are different, so it's just important to do your research and not give up trying and not give up on what you're looking for. So with that being said, like I said, that's how I bathe my bearded dragon, and that's how I cut his nails.